So Mod Ryan has been on Twitter asking for people to give opinions on this question. If you could change anything at the following bosses, what would you change? Elite Dungeon 1, 2, and 3, Virago, Rise of the Six, and Kalphite King. So in this video, I'm going to cover the bosses that I'm familiar with and have a lot of experience with, and give some ideas and thoughts that I think Jagex should absolutely do, or consider doing something similar to these bosses. I'm going to cover ED 1, 2, and 3, and I'm going to cover the Kalphite King. I don't do a lot of Virago. I have done like one kill at Rots, so I'm not going to talk about those, but let me tell you, I have some big ideas that Jagex should do for the others. Let's talk about it. So to start off with, I was reading through the comments that people were leaving there. A lot of people were just talking about the current bosses and saying, Kalphite King, maybe we should change the green healing. Elite Dungeons, it'd be nice if the dragons didn't follow you into the first boss in there. It'd be nice if Masuta wasn't time gated. And these are all things that absolutely are valid, but I'm going to go a step further. And I'm going to say that Jagex, you should 100% be making hard mode versions of all of this content. Every single piece of content in here needs to be scaled up and have a hard mode version that needs to be offered to the players. This would probably be much easier content for you guys to develop and produce, seeing as all the assets and everything's already in game. You leave it looking the same, you just add maybe like a couple of extra mechanics to like the last boss in each dungeon. And then you just scale a few things like health values, damage values, and all this sort of stuff, and add some more challenging content. As for rewards, I think that it shouldn't necessarily need to be changed all that much. Add maybe like a 5% increase on the actual rewards. It's going to take longer to run the dungeon overall anyway. And then add some extra new rewards that are cosmetics to these bosses in this content. That way you are not affecting the market in terms of gear value, not making it feel like FOMO for the players that can't necessarily do the hard mode yet, and it gives them something to work towards, and they're only missing out on a cosmetic that would be tradable that they can buy on the G if they want to. So high level players would get stronger, more difficult content to actually challenge themselves with and work through, and they would probably be trading off GP per hour in terms of rewards from the dungeon themselves, except for the chance to get the new tradable cosmetics. RuneScape's lacking a lot of challenging content right now, especially with the scaling of necromancy and other combat stuff. So scale the content that we've got in game that doesn't have a hard mode and add a hard mode to all of them. This is something I think definitely should happen to everything that doesn't currently have a hard mode. So that being said, let's actually talk about each thing individually. Let's start off with Elite Dungeons. So as of currently, I do feel like Elite Dungeons are pretty much okay in the terms of actually how they're designed. I don't really have much issues with the current versions of them. Maybe we could talk about Masuta and talk about the time gating on that. That's the only thing that feels a little bit bad in terms of the way the content is at the moment. So Masuta at the moment has a time gated version with the waters that spawns in the actual second phase, and you kind of have to kill the waters, or you just AFK at the bottom of the arena and wait for the next phase to begin. It'd be kind of nice if you added an option to ignore all the waters but DPS through a DPS check on Masuta to skip into the final phase. If you did this, the final phase, one, would do more damage to you because you didn't get any of the shields from the water pools that you normally get, and two, you would have to tank the current waters that have spawned in the meantime while you do your big DPS rotation. This gives a good trade-off for current players that are high level and more experienced with the dungeon to be able to skip that phase quicker, even if it only saves a little bit of time. It feels like you're doing something with your time as well. But it also gives the low level players, people that are learning it and aren't as confident, the option to still do the regular way, kill the waters, get the shield, and deal with the last phase in that way. So if you're a high level player that can do a lot of damage and deal with damage pretty well, then you can tank all the current water pools and skip through to the final phase, and then the water pools will all disappear, but you wouldn't have any shield. And if you aren't a high level player, then you just deal with it as it is. Other than that though, I can't really think of anything in any of the dungeons that stands out to me massively, except for the fact that the mini bosses in the dungeons don't really feel like they do anything. Apart from give dungeoneering tokens, I'm talking about the mini bosses, not the regular 3 bosses, but the mini bosses in the dungeon, they don't really seem to have any value. It'd be quite nice if maybe they dropped, for example, in ED1, they had a chance to drop 1 scale, and then maybe a 5% chance to drop 10 scales or something along those lines that would then give you more of a reason to go out of your way to kill them. The content's there, but they're not being used for anything, and it feels like, why develop the content if the value for it just isn't really worth doing? You could do the same for ED2, have it always drop 1 energy, but then have a 5% chance to drop 10 energies for killing the little mini boss. The same goes for ED3, it can drop 1 Blackstone Heart, and then maybe it can drop 10 at a 5% chance. if you kill it of 10 Blackstone hearts. This would just give you more reason and incentive to go out your way to kill those and get your little dungeoneering token reward as well. As for upgrading these into a hard mode version, I think every single elite dungeon in the game is insanely good content. It is super fun and it is different from a lot of the other bosses. You're not just killing a boss for 3 minutes and teleporting out and rinsing and repeating. You actually progress through the dungeon and you push your way through, clearing the mobs, and it's nice to actually have to work out an efficient path through the dungeon. It's fun. A lot of people enjoy this sort of content. I think they are designed really well and they're great ideas. However, at the moment, once you reach like tier 92 plus gear and you've had a bit of experience running the dungeon, they feel a little bit not so exciting and very quick to get through. The challenge isn't quite there anymore, and so it would be nice to see a hard mode version of this where things are just scaled up. You don't run through it as fast. The bosses are more difficult, they have more HP, they deal more damage. Maybe they have an extra mechanic on one on each of the first 2 bosses, and then the final boss will get an extra couple of mechanics. As for drops, like I mentioned earlier, Seiryu, for example, could just drop an extra 5 or 10% ancient scales extra than it would in normal mode, but again, it would take you longer to run through the dungeon, which would in turn probably reduce the amount of scales you do get for running that actual hard mode dungeon. But you can chuck on some cosmetic rewards, which seems like Jagex don't like to do, adding cosmetic rewards to a boss, which would make perfect sense to me. Everybody in the game loves ability overrides. Seiryu has a big purple fire breath. Why can't we use that as a dragon breath ability override and then drop shards for this? So you have to get 1,000 shards in total to be able to make the scroll, and then you can sell it on the Grand Exchange, or you can sell the shards on the Grand Exchange with the players and they can combine them into the ability override. This would give a nice reward for the actual hard mode version. Players would be able to set their own price for this because it is a player run economy and the demand of it would be down to the players, and it would give the higher level players something fun to run towards and actually work on. ED2, you could maybe have an upgraded version of the Blackstone Dragon Pet if you get 1,000 shards from killing him. And then in ED3, maybe we can get some kind of Necromancer override set, seeing as it's kind of like a Necromancer dungeon in the way that you could work towards. Again, you have to unlock the different pieces. You could drop armor sets in the dungeon from the bosses that are purely cosmetic overrides. So you will get a glove drop from the ambassador and it will say, congratulations, you have unlocked the ambassador glove override. And then you do the same again, you get the ambassador helmet, the ambassador body, all this sort of thing. And you don't have to look exactly like him, but just something that matches his theme. It'd be nice. People would go for it, and if they're tradable, people would definitely go for it. I like this as well because it doesn't mean that low level players will be missing out on stuff, because it is only cosmetics and chances are you're trading off more actual rewards from the original dungeons in return for being able to do some more challenging content. You're not locking gear behind content that lower level players can't do, so you can still make regular gear more accessible, and I personally think this would be a really good addition to the game. The game needs more challenging content to retain higher level players and to give lower level players and mid-level players something to work towards, but you also don't want to lock those players out of using content like tier 95 weapons and stuff that have nice weapon specs to use. This could definitely be a way that you could do that. Just give people rewards in terms of cosmetics. And if you don't think this is something that would drive players enough, then you're absolutely crazy. Look at games like Final Fantasy XIV. The end game is the cosmetics. It is the glamour in that game. It's the outfits, it's the overrides. You could make RuneScape the exact same way if the issue isn't that you could just sell the cosmetics through the Hero Pass or in Treasure Hunter. Just make some extra ones, put some on the actual game and put some on your freaking Hero Pass, but give the players something to work towards that they can be excited about in challenging content that doesn't feel like players are missing out on. So, to sum up for Elite Dungeons, I think that there should be a hard mode version for every single dungeon that only gives a very slight increase to the actual drops that you would expect from the actual dungeon clears themselves in the first place, and offer cosmetics as rewards instead. You could give the cosmetics in terms of shards rather than the full cosmetic, so players still have to run the dungeon a few times to actually complete this override and sell it on the G, or you could let them sell the shards, but they can still repeat the dungeon to be able to actually get them. As for the current dungeon, I think looking at Masuta and doing something that allows you to deal with the time gate and feel like you're actually doing something in that fight would make it feel a lot better as well. All right, let's talk about Kalphite King. The Kalphite King, actually a boss that I have spent a long ass time killing, and I love this, but I used to love this boss so much. I still like it. The design of the boss for its date is actually probably better than a lot of current stuff we have. And a lot of people are like, what? What are you talking about? It feels terrible to kill, and it does. But that's because it's an old boss. When it released though, it was kind of groundbreaking. Some mechanics this has is insane, and I wish they would have implemented some of it into the current days. Not the green healing, we're going to talk about that soon, but let's talk about my suggestions for this boss. The current boss we'll start off with, I feel like it needs a lot of mechanics cleaning up. And what I mean by this is constantly being stunned with barely any warning unless you've done the boss a ton feels absolutely terrible. You can use Anticipate and you can use Freedom to deal with these, and you usually do have it actually available to do this, but there should be a better visual or audio cue to let you know that it's time to use one of these abilities. Using these abilities to deal with mechanics isn't an issue. It's the fact that it just catches you off guard in a lot of places, and it happens a hell of a lot during the fight, so it just kind of feels a little bit bad. If you gave a bigger like cue to these abilities, the Kalphite King did a different animation to show that he was about to use a stun or something like that, or there was a little flash in the arena that showed this was about to happen as well, it would make this a mechanic and not just an annoyance. If it's something that gives you a warning is about to happen and gives you a chance to deal with it, it feels better, because if you screw it up and if it doesn't happen, that's on you, but it gives you that opportunity to add the skill ceiling to allow you to deal with these stuns. So just add a better visual and audio cue for any stuns coming through the fight, and then people can deal with them, and it doesn't feel bad if they don't get it because it's on them. Everyone knows that the green healing aura or the green healing shield or whatever it is freaking annoying in this fight, and I feel like this was added just to extend the duration of the fight rather than being an actual mechanic. I think this could be a good mechanic if done correctly, and the way that I would suggest this is done is, again, with a visual or an audio cue to when this is about to happen, not an audio cue and an audio cue. It should have both 100%. It should give you a visual cue and a good amount of time, maybe like a second or two, to react to it, to tell you that the Kalphite King is about to do a green heal. Do not let it repeat this again and again and again. Put it on like a cooldown or something like that. But when it does do it, if you don't notice it and you don't deal with it correctly, make it heal him a ton. Make it heal him a lot. If you hit him with 5k damage, make it heal him 20k, because you've given plenty of warning that this is going to happen, and people can get off of the boss with enough reaction time to actually deal with it. This way, if it does happen and you heal it, then you screwed up. But if it doesn't, you can just avoid it and you can deal with it properly, and it becomes an actual mechanic rather than a nuisance just to deal with. Again, things that are in-game just to extend a fight feel bad, but things that are in-game as a mechanic that players can deal with intuitively actually feel good. So you can have the same mechanic and the same idea, just polished in a way that makes sense and gives players the control to deal with it, and it will be a hell of a lot more enjoyable to deal with. Personally, I would also quite like to see Kalphite King getting more HP as more players join. So rather than just going in with 5 people and insta-killing it now with the power creep, maybe you just add an extra small percent. It doesn't have to be doubled for each person coming in, but just add a little bit extra for each person joining the group, just so he doesn't immediately instantly die. Also, this boss has really no value in terms of drops right now, so the only reason to kill it is probably for the perfect chitin. You should make this droppable for every single player in the group and not just the top DPS. Anyone who deals any amount of damage to the boss should be able to get the perfect chitin drop. This way, if I have someone that I know that needs it, I can take them in a group in the clan and we can do a mass and we can get the people that want it the actual drop. Now, moving on. Again, Kalphite King should have a hard mode version. Kalphite King is a great design boss because it gives you things that makes you deal with actual mechanics with another player. I loved in the past the idea of having to have a friend come with me to provoke the boss when he's going to do his instant kill. I don't think the insta-kill is a bad thing to deal with. I think it's a nice mechanic to deal with if you are coordinating correctly. Coordinating in a boss fight feels great for those people that want to do it. And again, the reason that you add cosmetic rewards rather than upgraded gear or anything like that is people don't feel like they are missing out if they can't do that boss or don't want to do that boss. It gives the opportunity for high level players to go and kill a more challenging boss, and it also gives people an opportunity to feel like they're in an MMO again by going with their friend, at least just 2 people, and then going in and killing a boss together. I would love to see a hard mode Kalphite King scale scale when you add more people to the group, just like Raksha does. So with 2 people as the minimum, it would have quite a decent amount of HP to deal with, so it takes 3 to 5 minutes to kill. And then as you add another person, it scales again and again and again to keep that kill time consistent with if you had it in 2 people, 3 people, or 4 people. I would keep the same mechanics, just scale them up to do more damage, make the heal do a stupid amount of heal, and if you screw it up, then you screwed it up. It is what it is, but you still have to react to it in time as long as there's a good enough visual to it. You could also scale up the reaction time needed for the mechanics in hard mode. For example, when Kalphite King is going to charge to the side of the room and then knock back anybody that is in front of him, make it happen a lot quicker. We have dive now, we have bladed dive, we have surge out of the way. We are ready to deal with these mechanics being a lot quicker and more punishing. Also, for the insta-kill green mechanic, make it so the person who is on the provoke duty has to react quicker. Don't make it something that takes a long ass time to do. Make it fast, make it so that you have to be thinking and be ready at all times. I also think it could be quite nice to add the actual tri-breeding feeling to this boss again, or at least hybriding, because that was kind of the point in the first place. When he is using melee, make it so his resistance to range is actually really high. Like, not just reduced a little bit, but really high. Maybe even he's protecting from range and you have to use something else. This could be kind of nice. Again, this is for higher level players. This is more challenging content, but it also only has cosmetics as a reward. So these cosmetics are tradable and other players can still get them, and they're not using FOMO to miss out on it. It is purely that you want to kill this boss because 1, it is fun, and 2, you still get a good reward for doing so. Rewards that you could do for this is a melee ability overrides, maybe a shield override, maybe you add just like a new pet or something like that. It doesn't have to be anything insane. It just has to be something that is worthwhile for people to go and get. Use ability overrides as content in game. Use cosmetic overrides as content in game. It is something that people will grind for. People love their like cosmetics and their fashionscape. It's not a secret. Use it as rewards for bosses, for God's sake. So that's the changes I would suggest for those bosses. I'm not going to talk about Virago and Rise of the Six. I've not done anywhere near enough to be able to even talk about them. I don't understand the fights anywhere near as much. Like, it's not something I'm going to talk about. But they could do the same sort of thing with Rise of the Six, with a hard mode and cosmetics overrides. I think they could do that with a lot of stuff. And personally, I would love to even see an insane level for anything that already has hard mode. If we have a hard mode Carapack, give me an insane level Carapack that I have to go in a group with because it's so freaking hard. It's so difficult that it's crazy. Don't even give rewards, just have a title. Purely have a title. You've completed insane mode Carapack. You've got no drop from it. You've just got regular normal mode drop loot if you want, and all you get is a freaking title for doing so. People can wear it with a badge of honor. It gives the people that want to actually work towards stuff afterwards something to do, even if they only kill it once. Make it so freaking difficult that you don't think it's going to be possible, but you know the RuneScape players will be able to do this. All you have to do is ramp up the numbers, make the fight crazy difficult, and make players work together. They'll enjoy it. It'll be great. And it'll add a sense of achievement to it. Maybe you do add like a little cape override or something. The insane Carapack cape, or the insane Telos cape, something like this. Something that's just, it's purely cosmetic, but is a nice achievement for players to work towards. Jagex, it's time to use cosmetics as a reward in this game. Make Fashionscape the end game. If you're scared of gatekeeping gear and worried about that, which I think is fair, and I think that all players should have access to good gear, make the freaking cosmetics the end game. People will still go for it.